I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. Again, I want to welcome you here to the show. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Todd McFarlane's TV ambitions, potentially leading to movie ambitions. We are also going to be talking about an image union. I don't know. Maybe a little bit talk about the Book of Boba Fett trailer, and who knows, all this and so much more on tonight's episode of the Retro Rogues Live. I want to welcome you to the show. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator, graphic designer, worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such as Batman Incorporated. Let's see, for tonight, we'll say I, Vampire, and Stan Lee's The Traveler. Anyhow, but enough about that. Welcome back, my great co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, some of the fun things you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. And I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a film production company located in Arizona. We are currently working on a new project that is going to be leading to a format change on this show where Dave, myself, and my partner, Robert McVeigh of Bad Bob Productions, will be bringing to you a brand new story, brand new characters. And we've been hard at work at that. So we hope to be revealing that to you very soon. And as part of that format change, Dave has been doing some live draws during the show, and he's going to be doing another live draw. This time he's going to be doing Spawn, right? Right, Dave? We're going to be doing Spawn.
Yeah, see, there goes my mouse again. I'm not going to make the double click Modern Family reference again, but why not, right? Double click. Anyhow, that's
mouse.
not me. That's not me. That's the mouse. All right, and not that other mouse. This one. All right, okay, enough about that. But yes, I'm going to be drawing Spawn tonight, live drawing Spawn on the show. I am a Spawn fan. This is my trade paperback, actually, of the original first several issues of Spawn. I actually bought this at the McFarlane store back when it was over by, was when the IKEA was new. That was the one that had the showroom.
I remember that.
Not the one by the stadium. And when I bought this particular trade paperback right here, I actually had a conversation with Mr. Al Simmons himself, who happened to be there that day. And I got to talk with him. Really nice guy. And talked about my love of, Todd McFarlane's artwork, talked about my love of Spawn. And you guys don't normally see it, but I do have quite a few actually McFarlane toys actually here in the studio. There's actually one of my favorites is actually my large size RoboCop. And I actually got that also at the McFarlane store. One of my biggest regrets actually is not getting. Do you remember when they were doing like the Spawn animated series looking stuff? It was like
I do.
And they had like the comic books that kind of went with it, and it was kind of more like, it wasn't really, I guess it was more family friendly, but they took Spawn and repackaged him as if he was a Saturday morning cartoon superhero.
Yes.
I bought those things, and I didn't buy them back then, and that's kind of something I'm like, man, I should have got those back in the day. But anyhow, I will be drawing Spawn tonight. I'll be drawing old school Spawn tonight, though. So there you go.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I remember meeting Al Simmons at the very first Phoenix Comic Con. He was there at a table. McFarlane Productions, I should say, because Todd himself wasn't there. But Al and a couple other people from Todd McFarlane Productions were at the very first Phoenix Comic Con, which was a teeny, tiny one-day event at a Best Western hotel. And they gave out these like overstock Dr. Evil and Mini-Me figures, and I still have those somewhere. they were packaged in bags and stuff like that. So it's clearly something that they was like overstock and they were giving away at promotions. But like, I think a lot of people remember that actually went to that event, even though not very many people went to that event. I think it was like 300, 400 people at that one. And of course the Phoenix Comic Con exploded several years after that. But yeah, he was a really cool guy. And I remember he was out there and talking to fans and things like that. And funny enough, we couldn't get Todd McFarlane Productions back at the Phoenix Comic Con for years. I actually remember literally chasing Todd McFarlane through the San Diego Comic Con, talking to him about coming to the Phoenix Comic Con again. And, it also kind of reminding him, hey, you guys were there the first year. You know what I mean? We've expanded since then. We want you to come back, and we want you to come. And it was a really interesting conversation I had with him, because I caught him in a couple of moments where he was starting to kind of BS me a little bit, and then realized that what he was saying wasn't true. And he kind of stopped himself and kind of reset. So it was funny, because I literally was walking with him, as he was going from his panel to another like event or something like that. So I'll never forget that experience of talking to him like that on the run. It was an interesting conversation. Asia's in the house. She says, "Hello, darlings. Hello, Asia. Glad to
Hi,
see you."
Aisha.
We appreciate having anybody right now. I was just telling Dave that it just seems like so dead on Twitter at the moment. That's my primary anti-social media, as I like to say.
Right.
But we usually get a lot of our live folks, of course, come from Facebook. Case in point, Mott's is in the house. Good to see you, Mott's. Mott says hi. So it's good to see you. It's good to see both of you right now. But it was just looking so dead on Twitter right before the show. It's like normally I get some likes, a couple retweets and stuff like that, even from people that don't watch the show. Quite frankly, they just know me from Twitter, and I wasn't getting nothing. So I'm glad to see some folks in the house. Asia mentions, she says, I was there at the Rawhide at that show with Al Simmons' wife. Okay, so that's cool. That's very, very cool. I think a lot of people, obviously, based especially like in the Phoenix area, or have had a lot of dealings in the Phoenix area. Obviously, Todd's folks are around, because that's where they are. I mean, they're headquartered here, so it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a neat thing, the fact that a big company like that, with its associations with television, with toys, with comics, and all that stuff, is located here in Arizona, because we don't necessarily have a lot of that. But
Right.
we should get into this reason why we're talking about Todd McFarlane and Spawn in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead and share this article. This is an article from Deadline, and it reads, Todd McFarlane launches TV production unit, announces McFarlane and Thumbs series. And then it says, talks taking on Hollywood as an outsider and plotting the Spawn universe. And this article was dated November 2nd, so it's very topical. It's kind of funny, though, because, in the show prep, I didn't even know about this until Dave mentioned it to me yesterday. So I'm going to mention a couple of the highlights from this article. It says, exclusive, Todd McFarlane, the comic book creator behind Spawn, a filmmaker and entrepreneur, has launched a dedicated television development and production arm of his McFarlane Films, which has a first look television deal with WIP. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, if it's supposed to be WEEP, because it's spelled WIIP. WII to me is we, so it's WEEP. I don't know. And they reference the mayor of Easttown, a property I'm unfortunately not familiar with. It says McFarlane Films' initial television development slate, overseen by McFarlane and his president of television, Sean Canio, includes two projects, McFarlane and Thumbs, says from Thomas Lennon, co-creator of Reno 911 and co-writer of Night at the Museum. It says also Anders Weidman is the co-creator of Paramount Plus's Interrogation series. He's a prolific graphic novel author. Sean Lewis. Oh, these are just other people associated with the production. It says, and Shadow Machine, a producer on BoJack Horseman and Guillermo del Toro's upcoming Pinocchio. They joined Sam and Twitch, a live-action TV series inspired by the popular characters from McFarlane's Spawn comic, which was announced in June. And I'm not even going to try to butcher those people's names. Further down in the article, they do talk about what these shows are about. So let's see if I can find it. McFarlane is a stop-motion animated event series created by Lennon in partnership with Shadow Machine and WIP, whatever you call it. The project is described as Night at the Museum meets Toy Story in Twin Peaks and will feature original McFarlane toys. McFarlane and Lennon will executive produce the series along with Canyo and Shadow Machine. So, were you familiar with that premise, Dave, of what McFarlane is supposed to be about in the format?
No, I am because I read the story, but initially when I heard that they were doing this and I just read the headline, when I first read McFarlane, because Todd will go online and do like little drawing things and stuff from time to time. He's been doing a lot more promotion lately, ever since I got the DC license and whatever else. And so my initial thinking when they said McFarlane, I assumed it was going to be sort of like a reality show where you would kind of follow Todd around as he, works with, his staff at McFarlane Toys, and you'd see them creating toys and creating the comic books, and you'd see maybe kind of behind the scenes where he's getting set up to do one of those drawing, videos that he posts online. And like I thought it was going to be almost kind of like not like what Gary Vee does, but something more in between like Gary Vee and like a standard reality show. Like I thought it was going to be something like that. And then when I read what this was, I was like, okay, all right, sure. But it's not what I would have initially expected or thought. That it was going to be. I just for some reason in my mind, and this will sound whatever, but I would have liked to have had a reality show where you follow Todd McFarlane around, and maybe there's archival footage, from back in the day, and he's talking about, like, kind of sharing stories over the course of his career, and working with his staff. And I mean, I would have enjoyed a show like that, but maybe that's just me.
That's kind of what I expected too when I first saw the title. I guess I should pronounce it McFarland. I think that's maybe the way it's supposed to be. I don't know, but that's kind of what I expected as well. Was that it was going to be some sort of behind the scenes, some sort of documentary style, reality style of show, but completely different. So of course, what this evokes in my mind is Robot Chicken, something similar to that. I think it's kind of interesting, with the idea that obviously McFarlane Productions is heavily involved in the toy industry. So I think it's kind of interesting the idea that they might be having some of their designs. It says original McFarlane toys. I don't know if that means just it's going to be quote unquote McFarlane toys, or there's going to be like original designs just for the show. But I think I think that in itself would be kind of interesting. We'll just have to see, how it comes out and whether it ends up being a good show or not. The other show that they're doing is called Thumbs. And it says Thumbs, on which McFarlane Films has partnered with, again, Weep, Whip, whatever they're called, and Epicenter, which is known for Judas and the Black Messiah, is a live-action drama based on the best-selling graphic novel written by Sean Lewis of Coyotes, with art by Hayden Sherman. Weedman will write the adaptation of the story, which follows 17-year-old Charlie Thumbs James, a gamer and social outsider who enters an esports tournament hoping to win a scholarship from tech billionaire Adrian Camus's Gamer Academy so that he can get his ticket out of his neighborhood. But soon he finds himself fighting real life and death battles in a covert war between Camus's teenage army and a neo-fascist anti-tech movement that is about to take over the U.S. So I'm curious. Obviously, Dave, you're a big comics guy. Have you read the graphic novel on which this particular show is based, Thumbs, or have you heard of it?
No, I have not, but I'll be honest, I have not been actively reading modern comics for quite some time. I've talked about that before, actually, on the show. I'm probably several years actually removed from most modern comic books altogether. Um, it just felt like a lot of the stuff that they were, creating was not really meant for me, and none of it was really appealing to me anyway. And so I just decided to see my way out of it. So most of my focus has actually been on older comics. I think I've shown. Did I show my Machine Man #1 on the show previously?
I'm not sure if you have. I'm not sure if you have.
I'm gonna go grab it
I don't
and
recall it off at the top of my head.
yeah, I'm gonna go grab it and I'll show you guys the kind of things that have been occupying my time. But go ahead and keep going, Eric. I'll be right back. I won't be long.
So I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with thumbs. I'm curious if any of you folks are. Asia has an interesting comment there. She says he opened his own website for the toys. Now I purchased during the launch. It says thumb sounds like Ready Player One meets Solar Babies. So I'm familiar with Ready Player One, Asia. I am not familiar with Solar Babies. Um, Maybe I'm just kind of having a brain fart on that one, but I can't remember it. And then Hollywood Jackson is in the house. He's out there on YouTube land. We're glad to have you in the house, Hollywood Jackson. Appreciate you being here and also giving us a little bit of YouTube love there. So I appreciate that.
Hi, Hollywood.
And Watts mentions as far as like thumbs goes, nope. No, he hasn't read it. Not familiar with it. I wasn't familiar with it at all. I was very curious, like what that was when I first saw the article, the headline, and was like, well, what is that about? I haven't seen. I haven't heard. I'll be honest with you. It doesn't sound like it's going to be something that I would be into. I'll just say that.
So a lot of what's been occupying my time lately, which I haven't done anything in a little while, is I have been making a point to actually purchase older comics that I've wanted to own, which we have talked a little bit on the show about, or it has been me basically. I've been talking about how I want to have more of my older comics, get those graded and slabbed. The ones that I have, like trade paperbacks and stuff for. So I don't know if I've shown some of these, but I'll show some of these off. So this is my Iron Fist #1. So this is the kind of stuff that's been occupying my time, is either acquiring books to get graded or getting books ready to get graded. As I think everyone kind of knows, it's been kind of tough to get certain things graded right now because of all the backlogs and how busy everyone's been. But this is a more recent acquisition. And then this one is too. I don't know if I've shown this one off, but it was interesting. I saw actually people online actually talking about this book in particular, which I thought was funny. I got it because I've just always loved this character. And there's a lot of people actually thinking that it might be time to start speculating actually on Machine Man. So here's Machine Man #1. This is a 9.2. So these are the kind of things. Yeah. I've always loved this character. He's really cool.
It's a cool cover.
Yeah, it is really cool. Classic Jack Kirby. I mean, how you can't go wrong with the King Kirby. So, I think I've shown my Moon Knight ones. Have I shown my Moon Knight ones on the show before?
I don't know. I honestly don't remember. We've talked about Moon Knight quite a bit. Obviously, Dave is a huge fan of Moon Knight. We even have that write up in the official Retro Rogues e-zine where we do a primer for Moon Knight. But I'm not sure if you've shown a lot of that stuff on the air or not.
I'll go grab them real quick. They're just right here. It won't take long.
I didn't realize we're going to be show and tell tonight, so I don't have anything to show you right now. I don't know what else to say. I know you got some comments there, but they're meant for Dave, so I'm gonna wait on that. But I actually myself have actually been thinking about maybe getting some of my old comics graded, but with everything, as Dave alluded to, with the way that the state of grading is right now, I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's worth it. So I'm cynical. What can I say? I'm a bitter man. Here we go. You're muted, Dave.
Man, I just leave it unmuted. This is Werewolf by Night 37. This is the third appearance of Moon Knight. This is 6.0. It's an older book, but I'm still glad to have it. And then this was, I know I've shown this one probably on the show before, but this is the probably the most expensive acquisition I've made recently, but it was a little while ago now. This is Werewolf by Night 33. This is the second appearance of Moon Knight. So that's a 3.0. Still kind of cool to have. So anyhow, so there you go. That's the kind of stuff that's been occupying my time and in trading cards. So I have not been reading any modern comics because I just don't feel like they're for me anymore. So
yeah, I'm kind of in the same space when it comes to modern comics. I think the last modern comic I read was we reviewed it on the channel, and I think it was the uh, Spider Ham. I think that was the last, and we reviewed it on the show. No, actually, we did an Orville comic. I think
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah, we did.
So that
yeah.
would be the last comic book, the last modern comic book that I reviewed was that Orville book, and I never even got the part two. To be honest with you, I never got the part two of that book because I did want to. I did have every intention of getting it. I even pre-ordered it like at the comic book store, and I missed my window, and they'd already sold it. So I was like, oh well, you know what I mean. So I never even got the second issue of that.
Yeah, I had been at one point reading a lot of stuff digitally actually on my tablet, but I don't know, like I would go on there and look at stuff, and the things I kept reading, which is so funny, the stuff I kept reading, I was just buying stuff I already had in print and then having it on my tablet. Like for example, I bought all of the DC Comics Who's Who issues. I bought them digitally, so they're all on my tablet. I bought all of the Marvel Universe guidebook stuff, like Volume 1. I have all those on my tablet. Occasionally, they would do like trades and like packages of older, stories, stuff like X Factor, Excalibur, a little bit of X-Men stuff. I bought a bunch of Batman stuff actually on there too. That again, I already own, but now it's on my tablet, so I can just pull up my tablet and look at them. It was more of a convenience thing. But I would go on there with the intention of finding something new. I would look at everything and be like, I don't know. None of this is appealing to me. And then there'd be a sale, right? Like a sale in DC or Marvel or like I did get some Image stuff recently too. But it was older stuff. It was actually what was it? Wasn't I don't think it was Spawn or I can't remember what it was I got. And because it's still a while ago. And I'd be like, oh, that's on sale. And I would start going through the sale thing and I'd buy like a bunch of stuff that was on sale digitally. So,
yeah, I have a lot to say about digital comics. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit when we're talking about the Image Union stuff, get the Rogues Gallery riled up. David Motz was commenting nice. I think he was talking about the very first one you pulled out, which was Iron Fist. Asia, you said I have that one, and I don't know which one that was that you had. You did mention later, you said I collected Machine Man as well when I was on my Kirby kick. So, and that's, by the way, I'll be honest, that's a character I'm not familiar with. I never got into Machine Man. And Motz mentions, he says, I just scored big on some older Batman comics today.
Very cool.
Very cool. It's very cool, Motz. It's always neat when you get to add something to your collection. Me personally, I would love to be out there collecting additional books because there's certain books that I want. But I've got so much junk in my house at this point. I needed to start getting rid of stuff. I really do. And a lot of it that I have, it's not even comic book or collectible related. I just got a lot of junk in my house I need to get rid of. I was commenting, we were having like an online meeting the other day, and you can see that there's like a computer screen in the background over here, right? So depending on there you go. It's like right over there. There's a computer screen in the background. That's an old iMac that I never use. I mean, I still have it, and it's like, in my mind, I want to keep it because I want to be able to use that old operating system because I actually have some games and things like that use that, and I can't play them any other way. But I never use it. I never use that thing. It's just sitting there. It's just like furniture at this point. So I got way too much junk in my house.
And then Asia does mention she mentions Rat Queens or Rat Queens, Sweet Tooth, and Mouse Guard. I know those are all newer stuff. So I'm Asia, I'm thinking you're saying this is newer things that you had been. I know Sweet Tooth is actually fairly recent, and so is Rat Queens. And I did read Mouse Guard when the David Peterson, I think it's Peterson, when his series was originally coming out, and quite enjoyed those. So yeah, those are some cool stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with any of it. I'll just be honest.
I have heard of all of it. Rat Queens I'm mostly familiar with because I know Tess Fowler was working on it. Tess Fowler and I were friends. I think we're still friends. I don't know. I haven't heard from her in a long time. And then again, Sweet Tooth. That's darn, I can't remember the name of the writer. He wrote the Martian Manhunter story that Scott and I worked on in Justice League, and I can't remember his name right now. But Sweet Tooth was his creator-owned series that was published at I think one of the last titles published under the Vertigo banner, if I remember correctly. And
Okay.
then Mouse Guard is a really, really great series that was just fantastically well drawn. Really cool fantasy thing, but it's like with little mice. It was actually really, really cool.
Yeah, Asia mentioned Sweet Tooth is on Netflix, and it's amazing. So maybe I'll have to check that out sometime, Asia, because I do have Netflix. All right, Dave, do you want to start
Yep.
breaking out that stylus there and start creating your magic? Again, we're doing this because we were talking earlier about Todd McFarlane's TV ambitions, a new TV division over there at Todd McFarlane Productions. I think they call it actually McFarlane Films. And so they're also doing some television stuff, and we were just talking about some of those projects that they're coming up with. And we thought it would be fun to do something, obviously Todd McFarlane related. And we are going to be talking about, in fact, I guess we should just get into it. Why not? It was a request. It was actually from a request from the Rogues Gallery that we talk about this story that's ongoing at Image Comics about the formation of a union. So let's see. I think I've got a couple screen shares that I've got up here. And of course, no, wait a second. Is this the one? I apologize. What I will do is I will get the article, which is actually from Bleeding Cool. I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste it into the chat. So for folks that don't know, it seems that sometimes when I go ahead and share my screen, it causes me to turn into max headroom and nobody can hear me right. So this is not spam. This is a Bleeding Cool article regarding Image comic staffers forming a union. So, and then I want to acknowledge that Jane is in the house. Jane, it's good to see you.
Hi, Mom.
Check us out. If you're coming a little bit late, Dave is in the process of drawing Spawn, and we were doing that because we were talking about Todd McFarlane's TV ambitions. And now we're going to be talking about Image Comics a little bit and some controversy going on over there. So it says, Image comic staffers form a union, Comic Book Workers United. This is dated November 1st, so fairly topical. It said, today, Comic Book Workers United announced themselves as a union made up of staffers working at Image Comics. They voted by a supermajority to declare the formation of a union. They have an official statement here. I'm not going to read it. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to read their official statement. You can go on. I gave you the link to the article. It was signed by 9 or 10 people. Okay. I am going to talk about these people, not specifically, but in general terms, in a little bit about some information that I dug up. And what they did was they issued a list of goals. Okay. And I'm not going to read them all in their entirety because I think only the last one actually matters. I did a little bit of show prep with Dave, and I know Dave doesn't know a lot about this story, but we discuss it like in parting terms. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of what their goals or demands or however you want to term it. So they want to foster a more competitive industry as a whole through salary and workload transparency for all existing and proposed job titles. I think that's pretty reasonable. You know that most unions, their bread and butter, of course, is wages and benefits, right? So they want to make their competitive more industry through salary, and also they're adding workload transparency for existing and proposed job titles. Not sure what was so hidden in their proposed job titles, but whatever. The creation of a more transparent company culture through monthly all-hands meetings, so all staff can better understand both the current and future priorities, responsibilities, and workloads of other departments. They're not terribly unreasonable, depending on the size of the company. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Increase knowledge retention through the implementation of detailed record keeping and procedure documentation for all tasks deemed essential to any given role. Okay. Improve career mobility for all staff through stricter adherence to the company's stated intent to offer open positions up to qualified existing employees prior to opening them up to the public. That's an interesting one. Now, I've been in a union. I've been in two. Okay. And it is interesting because unions tend to want to hire from the inside, and that's good and bad. I've seen the good and bad in both of those scenarios because I've seen plenty of people promoted from within the ranks who were incompetent. Quite frankly, in my personal opinion, they were weak. Okay, they were weak administrators. They were weak leaders, and they were promoted from within. But at the same time, I've seen people come in from the outside that weren't all that great either. So, I don't know if necessarily one is better than the other. I would tend to say, let's look at who's qualified and just judge them on their merits. But I don't think that's what these folks are about. So, we've got improve career take the continuation of remote work for any employee who requests it, and the creation of a detailed policy outlining how the company provides reasonable accommodations and supplies for remote employees. That's an issue that I think is going to be a big issue going forward for any company, in the pandemic era, the post-pandemic era, whatever you're going to call it. It's going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to continue to want to do. Is they're going to want to work at home. Um, but at the same time, I think a company ultimately should have the say so of whether they want you in or not, whether they feel you need to be in the office or not. I'm going to get to some of the job titles of some of these people in a minute. And you tell me, it could be reasonable, but again, I don't know if I agree that the employer shouldn't be able to decide that. Better overall product through the immediate addition of staff, particularly in production and marketing departments. Good luck with that one. Everybody wants more workers. Guess what? Nobody can get more workers right now because nobody wants to work. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of it right now. So good luck on that one. Good luck, because I don't see what your company can do to improve that, because everybody's complaining about that one. All right, so the final one is the one that I really think this is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, I have a screenshot, and I am going to go ahead and put it up there. So this is from the article. I want you to be able to actually see it. You can actually see some of the other ones too. This is number 7, if you're following along. It says a long-term actionable plan to address the overall lack of diversity in both general staff and management. The authors, artists, and readers who bring comics to life have never been homogenous, and the stories we publish can only be improved by staffing our organization in a way that more accurately reflects the demographics of our creators, our readership, and the nation as a whole. Renewed commitment to company values through the addition of a collective voting option to immediately cancel publication of any title whose creator or creators have been found to have engaged in abuse, sexual assault, racism and xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ableism, etc., until such time as such creators have engaged in meaningful reparations towards affected persons. So I am going to tell you that's what I think this is all about. First of all, you're talking about like 10 people, 10 people sign this thing. I think I actually have a screenshot. You can actually see here. These are the people that actually are. This is from the actual site of Comic Book Workers United. I've got a screenshot of that. We, the workers in which comics have formed a union, and these are the workers. There's like 9 or 10 names there. I really feel like what this is all about is that last bullet point. They are attaching themselves to a very overt political agenda that goes beyond what unions typically do. Unions typically deal with things like wages, benefits. Obviously, there are certain industries where other issues are more prevalent and more needed. Like, for instance, I have a background in public safety, law enforcement. We wanted legal coverage. We wanted legal coverage in addition to, whatever the city, county, state was going to provide it. We wanted some legal coverage because we didn't trust our employers to do the right thing. And, there's a reason for that. So I understand that sometimes there's other things that are specific to your industry that you may want. But I am curious what you folks out there in the Rogues Gallery think of all this. I think it's clearly very agenda driven. I think that last bullet point is really what it's all about. They've got some other points there that are in a lot of ways neither here nor there. But I don't know, Dave. What do you think?
All right. Okay. So I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'll talk about it in general terms. Okay. When I was actively in the comic book industry, I was a part of a handful of conversations about the idea of possibly being part of a union, for comic book creators, pencilers, inkers, such on and so forth. Um, because, just because you're working for Marvel, just because you're working for DC or whatever, you don't immediately get, benefits of any kind or anything, right? And that's primarily what people were looking at and what they were concerned about. And they had very valid concerns. And, ultimately, I ended up not, being a part of, beyond initial conversations because as I had to express to everyone at the time at which a lot of this conversation was going on, I wasn't actively doing a lot of stuff for DC or Marvel at the time. I would kind of fallen out of favor or what have you. So I wasn't really doing a lot of stuff. And so I was like, look, I'll support you guys, in whatever way I can or whatever, I believe in that. But I was like, but I'm not in a, really in a position to really do anything because I am outside the industry looking in. So there's not much I can do. And so it's like, okay, cool, we'll let you know, whatever. And it kind of never went anywhere. It's a lot of conversations about it, but it never really kind of went anywhere. And I've talked before about how I was really lucky because I benefited from all of the hard work that was done trying to get people like, Simon and Schuster, more money for their creation of Superman, people fighting for better rights for creators, people like, the stand that Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri, like the original Image founders took, Will Portacio when they left the major companies and started, Image Comics over the fact that they felt like they were not being treated fairly, by the big two, right? So I benefited from all that. I still see royalties for some of the books I've worked on. It's not much, but it's something, and it helps out every once in a while when it shows up. And I'm very grateful and happy to have those things. But all of those things are fighting for better conditions, better working conditions, better pay, medical care, like it just that kind of stuff. Um, this agenda stuff, well, I understand you want to fight for change and you want the world to be a better place and whatever. I feel like it's kind of, in my mind, slightly misguided because that, like you said, Eric, I don't think that's what a union is supposed to be about. You know, if you have an employer or, or someone you're working with who's sexually assaulting someone or whatever, you should report that to HR, right? Or you should go and report that to the police. Like, I mean, I know it's difficult and I apologize for talking out my ass, but I feel like some of the things they're wanting to fight for, quote unquote, in terms of change with a union, I feel like it's misguided. I don't think some of that's what a union does. Um, a union might make sure that people get some kind of sexual harassment training, but in all honesty, that's not even really what a union does. That's what happens after enough lawsuits go through, and then the company goes to cover our butt. We better have some training to make sure nobody's doing something stupid, So that is more driven by, again, legal action, repercussions, So I don't know. That all sounds weird to me. I don't understand that. Like it does, if you want to fight for better conditions for your fellow employees, better pay, medical care, that kind of stuff, awesome, But that doesn't sound like that's primarily what they're looking for. It sounds to me like what they're looking for is some kind of societal change. And I don't feel like a union is where you start societal change. Maybe
I
I'm
think
wrong.
I think a lot of this is about Comicsgate. I think a lot of this is about Comicsgate and shutting people out that they do not want in the industry. I think that's what a lot of this is about. The irony is Comicsgate has already basically disowned itself from the mainstream comic book industry. They don't even look at the image model. You know what I mean? They don't even care about that anymore. And I do think it's important to note that the image model is very different than DC and Marvel's model, because Image, they are creator owned properties. Okay, they are not owned by Image. All Image does is publish the book, and the creator of that particular character, story, whatever, they maintain their rights otherwise. So, they want to do toys, they want to do television shows, they want to do whatever. They still maintain the rights to it. And I think a big part of why people have talked about a union that would be like, say, for DC or Marvel artists, these quote unquote more mainstream, artists that are actually, paid money up front. A lot of that also comes into a specific issue in the industry, which is the work for hire issue. So the work
Right.
for hire issue is a very big contentious issue. We talked about the Disney lawsuit that's been going on, where basically a lot of the descendants of these creators of all sorts of comic book properties are coming out, and they're wanting to basically reassert their rights, because the whole work for hire arrangement and copyright law has become really complicated, and in some ways justifiably so, because what a lot of people have said is that these guys got ripped off. People like Jack Kirby, you're talking about Jack Kirby. A lot of people feel that he basically got ripped off, and so I understand that, and that's actually something unique, and to the comic book industry, where I could actually see comic book creators, if they were to organize in that fashion, to say, hey, we want to protect our intellectual property, and we know the company's not going to do it for us, so we need to get some sort of our own protection going. I could totally see that, and again, that's something that's fairly unique to that industry, although it's also something that you see happening right now with the Writers Guild, with the Actors Guild, where they've been fighting for a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to streaming. We've talked about that in some of our Streaming Wars coverage, where that's also something where it's kind of unique, but it's also, I totally understand where they're coming from, because these old deals, they didn't include streaming. Streaming wasn't really a thing back then, so they didn't really concern themselves with it, and these large corporations exploit that. That was why Scarlett Johansson, for instance, sued Disney, was because she was like, hey, I had this sweet deal on the theatrical side, but because you released this on streaming, I think I lost a ton of money. And they ended up settling, right? So I understand those kinds of things. I really do. What I don't understand, and what I'm not a supporter of, and I will absolutely come out against, is cancel culture. I think that the fact that you just label an ist on somebody, and you're able to just cancel them, destroy their work, keep them from being put out there, I'm never going to support that. I'm never going to support that. Let's see. We do have a couple comments here. Asia, you said, this feels like corporate America madness, but, and I'm going to probably butcher the name, but John Chris Falusi, John Chris Falusi, and Nickelodeon have some dark stuff going on. It's either a bunch of people trying to make a stand, or they are rocking the boat to bring attention. I have no knowledge of what's going on there with Nickelodeon or this John person. I don't even know who he is. I will say that there is a lot of dark stuff that goes on in the film industry. That's very well known. That's part of like Me Too and all that kind of stuff. There is some terrible things. I mean, there's people that have been convicted of these things, so it's not even alleged. So I do understand that. I do understand that, but I don't think that this is. I don't think this is really what they're talking about. I really don't. I think they're trying to attach themselves to that kind of stuff, to like a very real problem. And what they're really trying to do is censor people that they don't like, that say things they don't like, that they think are mean or whatever, and they just don't like it. So they just don't want them to be involved, even though they are not in a position where they get to make that decision. They want to be in that position, right? They want this. I don't know. I don't know what I guess they want this sort of collective hive mind mentality, instead of like however it is that Image normally determines which submissions are going to take, right? I don't think they ask you for like, your criminal record. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they should. I don't think they do. You know what I mean? So I think what they do is they look at your story and they look at the artwork and they decide whether they like it or not. And if they think it's sellable. And that's how they determine whether they're going to actually, publish your comic book or not.
Allow me to answer the question from my perspective, having been as close to image guys as I have been over the course of my career, because I know more than a few and I've worked with more than a few, and some of them we're very dear friends. So they just look at the quality of the submission. That's it. I've never heard any stories about any book at Image being passed up because someone didn't necessarily agree with their politics. They were more concerned with the quality of the material and whether it would sell, what kind of market it might be able to reach, what the potential of that property might be long term. That's what they were primarily looking at. And the whole point of Image Comics anyway was actually to control your own destiny more, and be willing to take a risk on yourself, but control your own destiny more. So you didn't have the same safety net, you didn't have the same support system that you would have in a normal job, because that's not what Image Comics was about. So
yeah,
I don't know. This whole thing just seems really weird to me. So,
but what it does is it's like we talked a little bit off the air. It's like, of all the comic book companies, right, that you're going to go after or try to unionize for whatever reason, why are you going to go after Image? Because again, Image is creator-owned properties, and I don't even know how many people actually work for Image. I've looked at various sources. I have one that I did a screen capture of. Let's see if I got it here. This is from Zoom Info. I don't know how reliable this is. I know that it's a little bit dated according to its own data or whatever. But this one says they got 32 employees. Okay, and keep in mind, we're talking about a union of 9 or 10 people. At least that's who signed the actual document. I'm sorry, but small businesses are not where you want to be having a union, or where a union even belongs, because it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. When you can literally just go down the hall and talk to your boss, I don't see why you need a union. When you have a large collection of employees, especially blue collar, I would say, actually, because I've stated reasons where, I understand why actors are need a union in terms of negotiations for these things, and writers and other creators in the comic book industry might need this legal protection and things like that, stuff above and beyond what a normal worker might need. But normal blue collar workers, they worry about things like their safety, right? That's 100% paramount. And a lot of companies, they will do things that are unsafe, right? We talked about the gun controversy recently. We did a whole thing about guns in Hollywood and alternatives to using real guns in Hollywood. So I mean, there are issues where persons' lives and safety are in peril, and those are the reasons why I think you really want a union, right? That, in my mind, that's where you really want it. That's the number one reason for them. Asia had another comment here. I can say in my office, our HR is trash. Terrible stuff goes on, and I am glad I work from home. Very, very sorry to hear that, Asia. Very sorry to hear that. Please, no specifics, but I'm very sorry to hear that. It does suck if you have an HR department that's not willing to do its job, which does happen in a lot of companies. I don't know how big the company that you work for is or anything like that, but HR, and in my experience, I didn't have a lot of problems with HR, but the way that things worked with me, I mean, we had our own department that did a lot of our internal investigations anyway. So sometimes HR was kind of like redundant. But I've heard all sorts of different things from people about their experiences at their particular HR department, and some good, some bad. What I hear a lot about is like them kind of sitting on their hands and doing nothing when they really are supposed to be doing something. That happens. And that's why we have laws. That's why we have lawsuits. That's even why we have unions, right? So people can kind of take care of these things, because they're not able to do it all alone by themselves, because they just don't have the financial resources. And Asia goes on to say, the fact Image needs a union is wild to me. Are any of the founding people even still there? Feels more like just a name now. My understanding is, as far as I know, I think Todd McFarlane is still officially like the president of Image. Do you know that, Dave?
Yeah, I know Todd is still directly involved. Um, Beyond that, this is a conversation you and I had off the air. I said I don't know who. I think maybe Wills is still involved. Jim Valentino might be involved to some extent. I haven't personally heard anything out of Mark Silvestri in quite some time. I don't even know what he's doing right now, to be honest. Obviously, Jim Lee, Jim sold his basically entire studio Wildstorm to DC when he moved over to DC. So that doesn't, that's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I think probably one of the largest parts of Image right now is probably Robert Kirkman's Skybound Entertainment because, but again, that is its own separate thing. They just publish under Image, but he is an Image partner. He might even, sit on the board. I think he does sit on the board in some capacity. So Skybound is probably there. Beyond that, I I don't know. I mean, you just don't hear that much about what's happening in terms of the founders and what they have to do with Image much anymore. At least I don't, anyway.
Yeah, and part of that again is because of the nature of what Image is. Again, Image is publishes creator owned books, so these people have their own thing, like their own studio, their own company, that kind of thing, and then they simply publish with Image. That's all Image does. It's a gatekeeper in that sense because it's publishing quote unquote mainstream comics that actually go into a comic book store and that kind of stuff. And there's not too many ways to get in to comic book stores, especially at a national level. So they do function in some sense as a gatekeeper in that respect, but everything is creator owned. I did want to mention that I went ahead and I looked up a lot of these people that are listed on this on that signed the for the union, and I just wanted to give you. I went to a lot of these people are on LinkedIn. And so I went ahead and I just found some of their job titles. So like one person is the talent liaison at Image Comics. So you've got another person that's the accounting analyst at Image Comics. Another one is a production artist at Image Comics. I've got one that's for sales at Image Comics. Another one is a marketing content associate at Image Comics. We've got a comic book editor. We've got an editor who's also put themselves on here. Then we've got a book market and library sales manager at Image Comics. We've got a production assistant, and then we've got a specialty sales coordinator at Image Comics, and then we've got a senior production artist at Image Comics. Those are the titles that I found when I actually Googled these people up to find out what the hell did they do. I didn't hear anything about like a warehouse guy, like somebody that maybe actually packages these things, because I don't think they even do that at Image. It's probably all done at the printer. But I don't even hear so much as a warehouse worker who's packaging this stuff. These sound like all very white collar jobs, I guess is what my point is. And I don't see them as being these oppressed little worker bees that need a union for safety reasons and all that. What I heard also was some managers, coordinators. That's supervising. That's managerial. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of executives having a union. Okay, I'm really not. I'm sorry. I was never in that position, and I just don't have any sympathy towards them. The highest I've ever been is a supervisor. And it's just like, if you're in management, I don't think you need a union. I'm sorry. I really don't think you do. So, yeah, Asia just said it. It said, okay, the executive department formed a union. Just kidding. That's what it sounds like. I just gave you the titles of these people. I mean, that doesn't sound like the type of people that need a union to me, And like I said, the one argument that I would make in the comic book industry is that I do think artists and writers could use union protection like the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild do, because they do need protection of their intellectual property. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because the comic industry is so decimated right now. I mean, that there's so you're talking about a very small piece of a small pie, right? Now, when it comes to movies and television, that's where, of course, I think a lot of creators really get upset, is because now you're talking about real money, right? There's real money in the films, there's real money in the television, and all that kind of stuff. And so, that is something that I think that creators need to look at, because they should look at things like, okay, so what if this is made into a television series? What if this is made into a movie? Am I going to get anything out of that? But it's a tough deal, because I think, like a lot of things when it comes to these industries, there's a trade-off between when you're paid up front and when you decide to sort of defer payment because you want a deal. In other words, you want to be in control, right? So that's the whole work for hire argument. You know what I mean? Is like, if I'm going to pay you to do this thing for me, and I'm paying you money up front, and we agreed to this, and I said that you were going to make this thing for me, that's the big question. How much of that pie now are you entitled to when you made this up front for money from me? I've brought up the fact that the Superman case is interesting, because I know that the Superman is not considered, ultimately, at least legally, a work for hire. In other words, the creators of Superman already had the character ready. They already had a story. They basically had like a little strip, and they were shopping it around. And that's a different situation than something where I'm the I'm the publisher, or I own my own comic book company, and I come to my bullpen and I say, hey, listen, I really want us to create a character that is X, Y, and Z. I really want a character that's like this. Maybe I want something that's more diverse or something like that. I'm like, I really want a character that has like this, this, and this. Make it happen. You know what I mean? And I'm going to pay you guys to do it. That's a different situation. And then there's an argument, right, about who's entitled to what at that point, because I'm paying these guys up front. I'm telling them that I need something. I need something like this. Who knows how vague or specific I am on what I want. But then I'm letting my team ultimately figure out the details, right? I'm letting my team, I've got like an editor, I've got the full thing. I've got an editor, I've got pencilers, I've got inkers, I've got writers, and I'm like, hey, make this happen. You know what I mean? And I'm paying everybody. That's a different situation, right? Than when somebody has an actual work they already did, they already figured out, they come to you and say, hey, would you like to buy this? That is a different situation. So it does get complicated, but I don't feel like where the folks at Image are coming from is the place that you would want to support a union effort. It sounds like cancel culture to me. It just sounds like cancel culture. Asia says, Excel spreadsheet workers need rights. There's unfair conditions for Excel spreadsheet workers. And that's what it comes down to, too. I mean, I don't tend to support white collar folks that want a union. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no situation where I would support a quote unquote white collar worker that wants a union. I get it. There are still issues about wages and things like that. I just talked about a lot of stuff involving intellectual property, where I totally understand where writers and artists and actors are coming from, where there is a situation where they want to make sure that their image is protected, that their work is protected, but that also comes down to basically compensation. That's a lot of that comes down to compensation, which is a basic thing for a union. But asking for a vote when you think that this creator is some sort of ist or guilty of some sort of ism, that to me is classic cancel culture. That's just the way that I see it.
Well, and I was just going to say, I've made it no secret that over the course of the last several years, I've had a lot of day jobs in addition to running Kirby Tees, and still doing freelancing projects and stuff for various people. And I have quite a few scars, actually, from working in conditions that I wouldn't say were super unsafe, but were questionable at the end of the day. And one of them was, I think I talked about this on an old episode, where I basically cut through my fingernail and almost cut the end of my finger off by accident because I was trying to cut flyers in a hurry, and we didn't have the proper kind of rulers that actually have the safety guides on them. So, and the irony of that is I was classified basically as an inside sales, quote unquote, graphic designer. But here I
Okay.
am, handling, I routinely would run equipment that could get me severely hurt, in those days. So all I'm going to say is that it's a very different thing where you're working a job where you're dealing with equipment and stuff, and you're in potentially questionable circumstances versus, you're just, sitting in front of a computer and you're making sure something's paginating correctly. Those are just two completely different things. And it's also hard for me because, like I said, when I was approached about these conversations about the idea of a union, I was not against it. You know what I mean? But it was at the same point, you know, you know, you do need some kind of protection. But that's why I'm always on here talking about read the contract, read the contract, read the contract. Get a lawyer to read a contract, hire a lawyer.
Right.
The big difference between Bob Kane and Bill Finger at the end of the day, whether everybody wants to hear it or not, is a lawyer. And that's the thing you have to remember.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And it's something that the other thing I want to go back to is in all those titles descriptions that I gave. Again, I didn't hear anything about people that work in the warehouse or something like that. I would be much more sympathetic to those folks. You know what I mean? The people that are packing the books and doing stuff like that. But again, I don't even know if Image does that. I don't even know if all of that's outsourced anyway, right? They have other companies that do that, or these days there are on-demand printers that you can use, and they will literally ship one book, you know what I mean, to wherever you want it shipped. I mean, it's expensive, but literally they'll do that. So I don't even know if they have that kind of a situation where they have people that I know they don't print things themselves. They don't have their own print shop. I mean, I know that. Nobody does that. No comic book producer prints their own comics, not at any scale anyway. That doesn't happen. Those kinds of people, I could understand them wanting a union. You know what I mean? Because they might be working in conditions that could be unsafe, and then also, they might not be compensated very well. I can understand that kind of stuff, but this kind of stuff is not so much. Not so much. Asia says, I used to drive a forklift and use reciprocating saws. Wish I had a union. That's the kind of stuff where it's like, I can understand that. That's where I can say, like, well, in those kind of situations, maybe you do need one. But I will say that there are a lot of companies that I think do take safety very seriously, if for no other reason, because they don't want to get sued. It's a self-interest kind of a thing. So it just depends on where you're working, right? But that is definitely an area where I think, a union could very well be needed. And I can understand it. Totally understand it. Hollywood Jackson says, looking good, Dave, as far as the drawings going.
Oh, thank you. It's not quite what I wanted, but we're at least seeing some results. So
Asia says, Dave, the Spawn looks fierce.
Thank you. You're all very kind.
And I think you are too critical of yourself at times. So we will leave it at that. All right. So I did want to talk about the Book of Boba. It was actually PJ from Orville Nation that asked me my opinion of the Book of Boba. And unfortunately, he's not here tonight to talk about it. I know he gets busy sometimes, so maybe he'll check out the rerun or something like that. But he specifically asked me, hey, did you see the Book of Boba trailer? What are your thoughts? So I have a couple screenshots. I'll put them up fairly quickly. Dave, you did have a chance to watch the trailer, right?
I did. It was still just that one time. I was going to watch it again, and I've been so busy I kind of ran out of time. But I have seen it once. So
okay, so I think that's good enough. And I do hope that the Rogues Gallery will have some comments on this. I don't know how many of you folks have seen it, We cannot actually show trailers on this channel. Every time we do, we get like a copyright flag. Now they're giving us like community guideline strikes, which those are really scary because then they'll take your channel down. So we were doing screenshots. We've been trying to do some screenshots. So I took some screenshots. So here's one of the opening scenes from it. And you can see that I also have the closed captioning. So you can actually see what was being said during the scene. And Dave kind of talked about this, the little spider droid thing running around right in front of Jabba's palace, which I guess is now Boba Fett's palace. And this really got me. So right off the bat, I'm telling you, I'm already mad right off the bat. His first line is, "I am not a bounty hunter." Boba Fett saying, "I am not a bounty hunter." I am sorry, but that really is a bad place to start, especially for someone like me, okay? Boba Fett is a bounty hunter, okay? Maybe he's not a bounty hunter anymore because now he's going to be a kingpin, right? I mean, that's, I guess, the idea. But man, did that put a really bitter taste in my mouth, because that is what he is. I mean, literally, that's what he is. And I was just like, ugh, okay, we're not starting out well, at least from my perspective. Now, the thing that really struck me, and I put all these pictures up of it so you could see it, is how there's so many scenes where he's not wearing his helmet. Anybody who knows, when I was reviewing The Mandalorian, I've been very consistent with this. I cannot stand how every single second you need to take the helmet off and show this person's face and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely hate it because it is so not Star Wars to me. Star Wars fans know and love these characters that never take their helmets off, or only take their helmets off very seldom or once. Darth Vader's a great example. Took his helmet off once. We get to see his face once when he dies. When he dies, that's when we finally get to see him. You know what I mean? And he's a broken old man. So, I mean, a little anticlimactic there. But it's like that's something that I think Star Wars fans understand. They love. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, classic Star Wars fans love those masked characters more than some of the unmasked characters. Even some, we talk about R2-D2, C-3PO, Darth Vader. Darth Vader is my favorite. So I'm totally in that camp where I don't need to see their face. It ruins the mystique. So I've got all these examples. That's that very first scene after he says, "I am not a bounty hunter." Of course, he's got his helmet off. Now he's putting the helmet on. We've got to see his face because we don't know what his face looks like, even though he's a clone trooper and we've seen his face a gazillion times. But we got to see his face now more because he's an actor. We got to see his face. Then we have this comment where he says, "Jabba ruled with fear." And then he says, "I intend to rule with respect." Again, by the way, now in another scene, no mask. No mask again. Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect. Now we touched about, Dave, you and I touched on this a little bit, even when we were doing The Mandalorian. And I think you shifted a little bit in your thinking, but I haven't. And one thing is that I've always thought Boba Fett is a villain. And one of the things that disappointed me about The Mandalorian was that I think they're more and more trying to make Boba Fett, this anti-hero, more heroic, more basically less of an actual villain. This is the guy again. This is the guy that Darth Vader had to tell, "Hey, cool your jets." Darth Vader knew this guy's reputation was like, "Hey man, I know your reputation, no disintegrations." And it just kills me that they're changing him so much. So that's another thing that I really did not like. I don't know if you keyed in on that, but that whole sequence of, Jabba rule with fear, I intend to rule with respect. Dude, this guy was Jabba's lapdog. This guy did anything Jabba wanted without question. But now, I'm going to improve on Jabba. I'm sorry. I don't understand it. It's very hard for me to go there. Then he says, this is the scene where he's got all the other crime bosses around him. Again, no helmet, of course. He can't wear his helmet. That's the most intimidating thing about Boba Fett is his helmet and the fact that you don't know what he looks like. By the way, if these crime lords are what, like 40 years old or older. They now know he's a clone trooper, I guess. I mean, this is a reason. This would be a perfect reason why Boba Fett never does show his face. It's because he's a freaking clone, right? There's 100 of or millions of his faces around, and everybody's just going to associate him with another clone trooper. So, but no, he's at the Kingpin meeting again. He's got his face nice and showing there. Then he goes out to the terrace again. His face is all nice and showing out there. And then we got this last scene, which did look interesting with these guys with these shields, these, I don't know, lightsaber shields. I don't know what you want to call them. Gungan shields, maybe. The Gungans had shields like that. So they've got these Gungan shields they're about to throw down. And of course, Boba Fett doesn't have his helmet on once again. So that is my impression of the trailers. I'm just like, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a purist when it comes to this stuff. And I'm the same way when it comes to like a lot of the movies and things like that. I cannot stand the fact that Spider-Man's mask has to be ripped off every 5 minutes so we can see the actor's face. And that's consistent with like every version of Spider-Man. And it just sickens me. I get sick of it. It's like, I don't care about the actor. If you can't act with the freaking mask on, don't take the part. Don't take the part. I'll give you a good example of somebody who actually does do it and respects it. And it's crazy. Deadpool, right? In Deadpool, he doesn't take that mask off at all because he actually respects the character because he knows how bad he screwed it up the first time. So I don't know what the solution to that is, but that's basically my impression of the trailer. We do have a couple comments here, so let me try to get to them. Asia said that the book says, "Woo! The Book of Boba looks amazing. I think we were getting Mandalorian Sopranos." I'll be honest with you, Asia, I never watched Sopranos, but I do understand where you're coming from. If it sort of, I think the idea of a mafia gangland Star Wars makes a lot of sense because you do have Jabba the Hutt, but now the Jabba the Hutt's dead. I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see. Hollywood Jackson says he's a drug dealer now. Laugh out loud. Is Boba Fett as a drug dealer? What was the drug they had in the prequels? Does anybody remember the stem sticks or something like that? They
were calling them death sticks.
The death sticks. He's a death stick dealer. There we go. I could see that. And Aja says, Eric, how would you feel after crawling out of the Sarlacc pit? Also, if you watch the Rebels series, helmets came off a lot. So it doesn't bother me. I am an actual recognized Sith. I live the reference to the Rancor pit. Love. I'm sorry, it's a typo. I love the reference to the Rancor pit too at the end. I'm not a big fan of Rebels. I'll be honest with you, Asia. I have not supported that kind of stuff. I'm pretty classic when it comes to my liking of Star Wars. I got into, as a kid, I got into like Ewoks and droids. I've seen the Clone Wars movie, the animated movie. I saw it in the theater. I liked it, but I didn't like it enough to really support the show. And I didn't really watch Rebels either. I do not. But I think comparing the animated to the live action, that's also a little bit disingenuous. I really do, because it's a different style. And the fact that, the clone troopers took their helmets off all the time in the cartoons, that doesn't equate to what they do in the movies, because in the movies they don't, especially the stormtroopers don't. Stormtroopers never take their helmets off. Maybe the clone troopers do to show the fact that they're all the same or whatever, but I don't think that was a good decision. I like the masks. I think the masks provide the mystique and they provide the menace. You know what I mean? When you start showing their faces too much, you lose the mystique, you lose the mystery, and you lose the menace. Now they're just a guy, Let's see. Mott says the mask helmet must be at the cleaners. Very possible. That's actually a criticism I've heard from other fans, that they don't like that they cleaned up the Boba Fett armor as much as they did. Like they went too far. And to me, I feel like that's very much a toy marketing decision. I really do. I feel like it's like they didn't want to make it look too much exactly like the regular Boba Fett armor. I think that's part of why, he he doesn't have like the bottom part of the suit. He basically just has the helmet, the jetpack, and the torso armor, because otherwise the toy is just going to look like another Boba Fett toy. They wanted to do something different with it, so he's got to have that brighter paint scheme and stuff like that. I'm very cynical these days, guys. I'll fully admit it. I'm very cynical. Mott says Deadpool's face is pretty jacked. Please keep the mask on so I don't lose my lunch. That's a good point. That is a good point. He does have a very ugly face, and that might be another thing. Ryan Reynolds might be like, you know what? I'd rather have the mask on than to be in the prosthetics all the time. So he's kind of caught there, right? Maybe that's what we need to do with every character. Is we got to make sure that their face is really screwed up. So when the movie version comes up, they're going to have that choice. Am I going to wear the mask or I'm going to wear the prosthetics? You're going to have to do one or the other, because we don't need to see your stupid faces all the time. Jane says Rebels is really good, in my humble opinion. And Jane, I do want to mention, I'm not trying to say Rebels is bad. I'm just saying I just didn't get into it. It was on cable at the time. It was only available on cable when it first came out. Didn't have cable. I didn't watch it. But now that I have Disney Plus, I still haven't watched it. It just hasn't called to me, I guess. It just says to you, Dave, I may have to arm wrestle Eric on this. So, and Watts also is coming out in favor of Rebels. And again, I just haven't seen it. I can't really say like I hate it or anything like that. I just haven't watched it.
I have seen a couple of. I've seen several episodes of Rebels. I think I personally prefer Clone Wars to Rebels. And I have seen a lot of Clone Wars. I haven't seen all of Clone Wars, but I have seen an awful lot of Clone Wars. I think my big thing with the trailer, which I said to Eric, was that I'm looking forward to it. I want to see it. I'm a big Boba Fett fan, and I'm open to, what they're wanting to do with the character. I think for me, the only thing is that I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more action, because that's the thing that I thought was just really impressive that they actually did with Boba Fett and Mandalorian, was all the incredible action, like all the stuff they did with him in Slave One. And it's a lot of him walking around with his mask off and him sitting down having dinner with people saying I'm in charge, and that's fine, but I hope we get more of that just bone crunching action like we had.
I would say that's very much not fine. I don't see why that's necessary. I don't see how that adds anything other than the actor gets to show his pretty face, which isn't very pretty, honestly. So I'm just, and I have nothing against the actor. I actually really liked him in Spartacus. If anybody's a fan of Spartacus, he did one of the Spartacus prequel shows. He was the original gladiator trainer, and he did a fantastic job. But in general, I'm just saying, I don't care if it's Tobey Maguire. I don't care if who it is. I don't care if it's Roddy Downey Jr. They seem to have to show their faces so much, even though they get tons of scenes as their alter ego. They always make sure there's plenty of scenes where they can be Peter Parker, they can be Tony Stark. Even when they're Iron Man, even when they're Spider-Man, they got to get their suit ripped off. We got to have the internal mask cam and all that kind of stuff. I don't like that stuff. And I know the only reason for it is because Hollywood says, oh, we paid all this money for this actor. We got to show their beautiful mug. And of course, the actors' ego themselves was like, you got to show my beautiful mug. And I just don't agree with that. I just don't. I'm very consistent. It's not just this. I don't like it. Mott's asked about Bad Batch. Have you seen Bad Batch, Dave?
I was going to watch it, and I honestly have not seen any of it, just because I've just been like crazy busy, and I honestly just never got around to it. Certain things, if my wife is not into watching, sometimes I don't see it. That's not to put the blame on her. That's just to say that I'm not going to put up a big fight to watch something sometimes. So I will, a lot of times, just as the song says, let it go. So that's why I haven't seen it, because what that means too is that if I'm going to watch something, I have to specifically set aside time to do it. and I was very interested in Bad Batch, and I just have not had a chance yet. So
And I haven't seen it either, Mots. I have not watched it. Um, I think if I'm honest, I will say I've never been a huge fan of the Clone Wars animation style, and that might be one of the reasons I didn't get into it that much. I much prefer, in general, I think I like 2D animation better. There is plenty of 3D animation I do like, but I've never been that comfortable with the animation style, and I think that keeps me away from most of what Disney Disney Wars is doing these days and has been doing even back in Lucasfilm days. Like we really recommended actually the original Clone Wars cartoon. We did a full review of that on this show. I think Mats, you might have even been around when we did, and we were really recommending it to people because it's a lot shorter. It is the basis of the 3D version in so many ways. Created characters or introduced characters for the very first time, and I do actually recommend that one highly. And we did do a review of that in the past. Hollywood says yes, Spartacus, and Hollywood. It's nice to see another fan of Spartacus. I really like that show. I actually own the first season. Very tragic what happened with the actor, the main actor who played Spartacus. He got cancer and all that kind of stuff. It's very sad. But one of the reasons that the Boba Fett actor, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. The Boba Fett actor ended up on Spartacus was because they had intended in the second season to do some flashbacks where they showed, just did some stuff in the past because, they were going to introduce Gannicus and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. And then they decided because the actor was not available, he was sick, the main actor, they actually did a prequel season. They did a prequel season. And that's the one where Boba Fett is the gladiator trainer. And I thought he did a really good job in that. I really liked him, especially because he had some very, very big shoes to fill compared to who was, the established, gladiator trainer. So really good show. I do recommend that to people. I don't know where that's available, if it's available anywhere these days, but Spartacus is a good show. Asia says, I'm all in for the Boba Fett series, but Disney likes to bait and switch a lot. So they may save the action for the actual show. Mandalorian was slow burn, then action. That does make a lot of sense that they want to keep a lot of the action, obviously, for the show. They don't want to show too much. Disney certainly has a tendency of doing that. And plus, there could be some surprises, right? They have been trying to do that quite a bit. They want to surprise us with things. I mean, think of Baby Yoda. The fact that they, in a lot of ways, they almost kind of shot themselves in the foot, especially from the toy perspective, because they were sitting on that secret for so long. And, all these people wanted their Baby Yoda merchandise, but they couldn't have it because they were keeping everything a secret, So, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. It's certainly possible that they would do that. And as far as the bait and switch goes, that's where I'm at. I think it's all bait and switch these days. So, again, I'm a cynical, bitter man. Mott says, happy wife, happy life. Good advice there, Mott. That's definitely good advice there. Let's see. Yeah, Asia, you're right. As far as Spartacus, you said that you mean the hot dogs and Lucy Lawless show. They were more nude than Game of Thrones. Yes, they were. There's some very crazy stuff in Spartacus. Very, very crazy. And yes, Lucy Lawless was in it. She was absolutely in it. Asia says, Dave, I wish we had time for the Spawn power meter.
Oh. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing good just to finish this at this point because I should have started sooner. My apologies, everyone. No, we're almost there.
I think it's looking really, really good. And Hollywood Jackson agrees. He says, looking good on the iPad and the 60 screen HD. We appreciate it when you give those kind of comments, Hollywood, if you're looking on it on different platforms. So he says it looks good both on his iPad and on his 60-inch HD screen. Thank you, Hollywood. Really appreciate that. Mott says, I hope I don't sound like a creeper, but I could watch Dave Beatty drawing all day long.
I will take that as a compliment.
Hollywood Jackson is calling dibs. We always get people that want a copy of your artwork. So, and
all you Asia need to do is download it.
There you go. Exactly. Asia says, I am on a teeny tiny phone. It looks great, Dave. My manicure makes it hard to type. Okay. So, and again, that's stuff that we really like to know. We really do like to know how this stuff is looking on these different devices, because our hope is to expand the audience, and who knows what people are going to be watching this show on. And we want to know that it's looking good, and that it's worth the effort to put the stuff out there, because if it looks like garbage, not so much. Mott says looking good. And then, of course, and then Hollywood says Mott's is the creeper. So,
all right, we're getting pretty close here. All I've got to do is I'm going to do the cape. I'm probably going to do a little bit of a power effect for tonight and see if we can do something kind of fun and magical. I think everyone can tell while I am looking at Spawn, the original series, because I've got sitting here, I also love animation, so I'm also imagining the classic HBO series, which had those really awesome intros with Todd McFarlane, which I still think are awesome to this day, where it was almost like he would kind of intro and kind of set it up. Like, that was just so friggin' cool. And there was so much amazing stuff that Image and the Image founders were kind of either getting to do or were doing back then that were so awesome and magical to me. And I guess the one thing, because going back to our original news story talking about the McFarlane, right, the show, I would have loved to have, seriously, I would have loved a show like that where it was just following Todd around during his day and just seeing what all goes into the creating of the comic books and the toys. Like, I would have loved that. Really,
I will mention that the article that I shared, and I do believe I shared the actual link in the chat earlier. There is an interview there as well where Todd McFarlane does talk quite a bit about that series, the HBO series, and basically some of his experiences in Hollywood and doing television and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I don't think I did actually. I'm looking back at the chat. I didn't, so I will share it just so you folks, if you want to check it out. He does talk a lot about his experiences with that show in particular. I actually have a couple VHS tapes of that Spawn HBO series. I don't think I have any DVDs, but I actually have some VHS because I don't remember if I had cable at the time, or if I had cable, if I had HBO. So I ended up actually buying some of the VHS tapes because I wanted to watch it, just because I thought it was so interesting.
That HBO series was so great. The Max was so great. Like, I know that people like to bag on some of the comics and stuff from the 90s and everything, and I'm always constantly defending them and a lot of the stuff they did, because I'm sorry, some of that stuff was just friggin' cool. People can bag on it all day if they want, but that stuff was just friggin' amazing. And the opportunities that the Image creators had to create stuff like that is so awesome. So,
yeah, there's a controversy that I'm aware of about writers versus artists. So, interestingly enough, the big 90s property I was into was Lady Death, and I was into Chaos Comics, which is, I would say more writer centric, because Brian Pulido was in charge of all that. So there is that sort of debate out there in the ether, I think, when it comes to 90s comics. Let's see. Yeah, Motz has a good suggestion. He says you should make a Retro Rogue sketchbook with all the drawings from the show. Of course, Motz, the problem with that is rights. Rights is a problem with that. So We do plan to do something along those lines. We've been talking about the possibility of doing something along those lines with our property, with our IP. In fact, we were talking. I think we even discussed it on the air of doing like a coloring book, like an adult coloring book or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but it is more difficult when you're dealing with somebody else's stuff. You can get into legal problems with that.
And beyond that, too, like, specifically with Spawn, I have such respect for Todd McFarlane. I would contact him and want to see if we could work something out if we did. I would never just, like, we're drawing Spawn here just for fun, and we make no money on this show at all. So this is just for just pure entertainment. But if we were, doing Patreon, or we were behind a paywall of some kind or something, I would have contacted, McFarlane, studios or whatever on the front end, and we would have tried to negotiate a deal, or we wouldn't be doing it, because I wouldn't want someone to just take Bushy Tails and do whatever the hell they wanted to without even at least asking my permission. So I would never do that to Todd or a fellow creator if I could help it.
Yeah, it's very well said. I mean, it would be very hypocritical of us as people that are trying to create our own IP to essentially steal somebody else's. So that'd be a bad thing. But as we like to say on this show, you cannot demonetize that which has never been monetized. So
that's true. That's true.
Of course, they can give us those community strikes and then just take the channel down. So that's how they get around that. Asia says, Mott's, I will oil glow wrestle you for dibs. It looks epic as usual, David. And the HBO series was amazing. There you go.
All right, so here we go. So hopefully this is where the magic's going to happen. We're about to see. All right, so let's see. Let's do. Okay.
Oh, Asia says she wants permission to cosplay Bushy Tails. I think she's got it, right, Dave?
Oh yeah, she cosplay Bushy Tails all day long. Back in the day, I would have paid to see that. So
cosplay is interesting, in terms of people that make a living on cosplay. It's also it's an interesting area. I will just put it that way, as far as what we were just talking about, because there are a lot of cosplayers that make a living out of it, and they don't do a whole lot of original designs, if any, so. I'll just throw that out there. It's kind of interesting sometimes what goes on in that world. As a fan, I don't think anybody cares. I know going Asia, you go to lots of conventions. I mean, that's where I met you, was at a convention. People don't care when people as fans are going around and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that at all. But I do think it's interesting sometimes with professional cosplayers, quote unquote. So. And of course, Hollywood says we need more Picard. That's what's been missing from the show.
Right. Hold on. Let me try to do a better Dr. Evil version. Right. That's just what we need. Maybe I should start quoting Mr. Freeze from Batman the Animated Series. In my nightmares. I hate that show. I'm sorry. Michael Ansara was so great as Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Like, oh my gosh. And then when you realize it's Kane from Buck Rogers, you're like, what? Like,
yeah, there was
oh my gosh.
There was one of his Buck Rogers episodes on MeTV this weekend. They do Buck Rogers every Saturday, and I was just watching him. He's awesome. Asia had a comment. She said, the Max was epic. I wish they would release it again. I miss Liquid Television. Aeon Flux was amazing. I remember Aeon Flux a little bit. I wasn't like huge into it, but I do remember watching it one time and being like, what the hell is this? Like, this is crazy. So I do have some memories of Aeon Flux a little bit. But yeah, that's interesting stuff. Really weird animation style, I will say. Really, really weird animation style.
Okay, so let's see. So let's see if this works the way I want it to. All right, and then let's see if we can get the second one to work. Darn it, I'm picking the wrong thing, aren't I? All right. There we go.
Let's get the full screen there. Awesome. I definitely dig it.
And I'm gonna, sometimes I'll go in and do a little Gaussian blur to kind of soften the shadows on stuff, but I specifically want this to be a callback to the HBO series, and that classic cell animation style has that kind of more hard edge, and so I want to keep it because I think for this piece in particular, it really kind of adds something. I really like how this one turned out.
Yeah, me too. I think
I'm
it looks
gonna
awesome.
do the John Hancock on this one because I really like how this one turned out. So we'll sign it here real quick and we'll call this good. So
Hollywood says, "Nice work, Dave."
oh, thank you. I think the worst thing was my signature. That's crap. Let's redo that. All right, hold on, everybody. Let me just do this again. There we go. That's better. And then we're going to tone it down because we don't want to oversell it. We just want it there. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right, there you go.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
Cool, thanks. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I enjoyed drawing for all of you. I hope that you all find it just highly, highly entertaining. And I just really, really, enjoy this time that we spend, once a week. Like I really look forward to it. And if you all are having fun, I am so happy that you're all having fun too. So,
Watt says, "Great job as always."
thank you, David.
Jane says, "Awesome."
Thanks, Mom.
Hollywood even said, "Fire."
Thanks, Hollywood. Thank you. All right, very cool. All right. All right. So, do we have anything else we want to cover? Are there any other comments or anything we need to go over? Or
comments are just on the drawings. Asia was saying we
Okay.
look forward to it, Dave, when you were talking about how you like to do the drawings every week for everybody. But yeah, otherwise we're all cut up.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, in that case, maybe we should just go ahead and go to the outro then.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So I want to thank all of you for hopefully watching or listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I have been one of your hosts. I will probably try to make more of an effort to be talking soon. Just a heads up, we actually do have a sponsor, and that's something kind of fun to talk about, Eric. We actually have a sponsor who's
Yes,
actually
that's
going to
very
be,
cool.
going to be coming on, and that's really great. Hopefully that'll enable us to do some more different, new, and unique things that will actually help us hopefully expand the show. This show is not sponsored, however, the next one will be. But no, yeah, I'm really excited for the possibilities of the future of the show, the project we keep talking about. I'm very, very excited about that too. And I want to thank all of you for just watching and listening to the episode. So if you're curious to learn more about me, see what occupies a lot of my time, you can definitely check out my t-shirt company. That's Kirby Tees. Check it out over at kirbyts.com, kirbyts.com. You can see all the fun things we've got over there. We've got some fun Retro Rogues live t-shirts. We've got the Skeletor. We've got the Brains Are Magic by Sir Aerosmith. Just a lot of really fun stuff over there. Please check out Kirby Tees and consider purchasing a Retro Rogues live t-shirt and supporting the show. We would greatly appreciate your support. But enough about that. I want to thank, as always, my great co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander, for as always providing his unique perspective on all these fun pop culture topics, news items, and all these different stories we like to talk about here on the show. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I am most active on Twitter. You can reach me there at BassGod14. That's at BASSGOD14. My DMs are wide open. That's actually where I got the topic from the about the image union. That was a suggestion. So I tell you they're open. They are open. And if you give me something, I will look at it and we'll feature it on the show. That's also the official YouTube. That's also the official Twitch. So if you comment on those platforms, more likely than not, I'm the one that's going to be responding to you. Always love to hear your comments. Please give us some love on those other platforms as well, because it just helps us overall. We've got a few comments here at the end. Hollywood Jackson says, awesome as always. Bye, everyone. Jane says, a fun and entertaining show. Asia says, good night, darlings. And Mott says, good night, all. And Hollywood Jackson says, woohoo, sponsored by. And we'll leave Hollywood with the last word.